we think we know what's going on in Pittsburgh, but we just don't know. And that's where I want to start today, because I actually think this is a bigger picture conversation than some of the other battles, like with the Raiders and who their starting quarterback is going to be this season. The Pittsburgh Steelers are off to an 0-2 start in the preseason, where they scored 12 points against the Houston Texans and scored 3 points against the Buffalo Bills in yesterday's loss. I get all of that stuff, okay? Mm-hmm. It's preseason. I'm not going to read into the Steelers only scoring 15 points so far. Mm-hmm. But realistically, we don't know what Pittsburgh is going to be at the quarterback position. So if I said to you, you're Mike Tomlin, right now, if you had to name a starting quarterback, who would you name as your starting quarterback?
The starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers should be Justin Fields. And I'll say it for this reason alone. Number one, the preseason, they're not showing what they're going to really do and who they're going to be during the season. So it's a vanilla playbook. It's, just getting operations down, small checks to certain fronts and certain looks that they want to get to. I'm sure they're going through that process as well. But they haven't unleashed anything. And I think for that team to maximize their potential in that tough division that they're in, Russell Wilson isn't the extender that he used to be. He can't make the big play, scrambling, running around the pocket, buying time like he used to. I would take the younger guy that they're probably comparable right now in their skill set and what they can do. I take the guy with the more upside and the guy that can make bigger plays in the running game, which we know Justin Fields can. So I'd probably stick with Justin Fields there.
This is why I think that this Steelers team is such, in this conversation around the Steelers, has so many different layers. Because I think there's a legitimate question on what happens to Russell Wilson if this doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
There was this past week on Fox Sports Radio, we had Mark Dominic, former GM of the Buccaneers, on. We said, all right, this is it for Sam Darnold. Now with J.J. McCarthy done for the year, it's his opportunity. If it doesn't work in Minnesota on this one-year deal, get ready to being life as a now lifelong backup in the rest of your career.
For sure.
And Russell Wilson is a decade plus in this game.
Yeah.
And is in his mid-30s. And if it doesn't work out, I don't think Russell Wilson has another decade left in the National Football League. But I think that the question is this it for Russell Wilson? And when you watch yesterday, Mike Tomlin says, I really can't get a judge on who my quarterbacks are because our offensive line played so poorly. Mm-hmm. Russell Wilson didn't have a lot of time to do the things that he did. Mm-hmm. So if your offensive line stinks, that's where you're going with Justin Fields, right?
Yes.
Because Russell Wilson, as you said, no longer has the ability not only to extend plays, but then even if you extend plays, to take those plays, make them positive gains for runs like Justin Fields has.
Right.
Now you're in a scenario as well where you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it has been 5 years since the Pittsburgh Steelers have got legitimate, solid quarterback play. And I say that because Ben Roethlisberger, at the end of his career, couldn't throw the ball 10 yards down the field. Mm-hmm. And that's like where I get to this point about the Pittsburgh Steelers is we are looking at Pittsburgh right now of who's going to start for Pittsburgh. And for an organization that is so storied in the National Football League and what we believe is well run in the National Football League, how in the world do they get to this point? How in the world do they get to this point where their best options this season are a veteran quarterback who can't move nearly as well as he once did, and we still don't know if he can throw, or a kid who we don't think can throw, but has the natural ability to break plays on his own, which really wouldn't play within your scheme? This is it to me. I just scratch my head and I look back and I say, okay, it's got to be the front office, because remember, this is also a quarterback room that one time had Mitchell Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett. None of those guys end up working.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's always hovering around 500, so you're not having a top 5 draft pick. And it's not that I want to place blame on someone, but I want to place blame on someone. Do we blame Mike Tomlin? Because we're probably going to this year if Pittsburgh ends up stinking. And there's going to be a conversation about, is Mike Tomlin, fit to be the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach? Has his run finally come to an end?
Yeah.
Is it a front office that has pretty much stayed consistent? Kevin Colbert ended up moving on. Omar Khan was promoted to general manager. I just am scratching my head as what is going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers that this sort of franchise would be in this conundrum again and again and again since Ben Roethlisberger stopped playing great football.
Yeah, well, we had that conversation about Mike Tomlin at the end of last year, right? So the conversation's already started. So this is pretty much going to be the end-all, tell-all of what that relationship is going to be like with the Steelers and Tomlin moving forward. But we talk about this, and it is front office based because I think it's front office based, but I also think that it was also a love for a certain player lasting longer than it should have. And that was the adoration or, allowing Ben Roethlisberger down the stretch to continue to play those extra years where the backup or the person that was going to be the one that was going to take over the reins for that job should have already been in consideration. So we took jabs at the Patriots for wanting to move on from Brady early on. We took jabs at, or the lack of jabs for like Aaron Rodgers sticking around in Green Bay a little longer than he should have, or people thought he could have, or whatever. So you start having those conversations of you have these lifelongers, you have these guys that have won Super Bowls and had success, and you want them to go out on their own terms. We can talk about a Peyton Manning, right? The Colts made a great decision with Luck coming in and, getting rid of him and bringing Luck in at the right time. So it has to be front office based, but I also think it usually stems in those situations where a franchise has had a lot of success and then they have a hard time replacing that guy, hanging on to something a little bit too long and probably not moving on as soon as they should have.
That is, and I am in lockstep with you, and I actually think that it goes a step further. And this is where the structure of the Steelers hurts them, is that loyalty and that ability to stay consistent with who they are, and it's made them great. But I think now what we're seeing is maybe in a new world NFL, it's kept them average. I mean, you have a TJ Watt who is throwing his body on the line. Cam Hayward, same thing, of guys who are battling through it, have battled through significant injuries. But even if those guys are completely healthy in all of these past seasons where they have missed time, their offense has not provided what it once did. And I would even go a step further in the Roethlisberger case, is not only was the front office loyal to Ben Roethlisberger, after he had his elbow injury, to the point of Peyton Manning of a neck injury, you could say to yourself, we better think of a better plan. We have got to address this scenario. Ben comes back after he misses the 2019 season with the elbow injury that ended up requiring surgery. The next year, ended up throwing 33 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Great year. The next year, as we said, he couldn't throw it past 10 yards. And they were just an average team, and I think that Pittsburgh was an average team at that point. And what Ben Roethlisberger was also known for was not making it easy on others. Ben Roethlisberger didn't want Pittsburgh to have a plan, to have an heir apparent.
Of course.
He didn't ever want to be challenged. And right when you thought Ben Roethlisberger may be ready to ride off into the sunset, he would say something in the media if the Pittsburgh Steelers were thinking of maybe doing something and saying like, hey, I'm the quarterback here. I've been here for a while. Or if it was vice versa and saying, I don't know how long I'm going to play. This could be it. Trying to get the fans to be like, oh, Ben, please be here. So Mike Tomlin is going to get a lot of crap this season. And I think that we can already see it. That division is just murderer's row. Yes. I mean, it is. Bengals, Browns, and Ravens. And the Steelers were a main part of that. But Tomlin, I think, can only do so much. The front office, in a way, can only do so much back then, but I don't think that they've necessarily addressed it. I don't think taking Kenny Pickett with the 20th overall pick in the draft, even though it's a first rounder, is the foregone conclusion that we fixed it. You pick in the top 5, that's got to be your guy. Maybe it doesn't work out, but it's not a guarantee that the 20th pick in a draft is going to be your quarterback. But I'm so glad that you brought up the point of Ben Roethlisberger, because I do think it dates back to him. And not that Ben Roethlisberger should be taking shrapnel from this, but it's how does Pittsburgh do this? Is it ownership, I think, takes some blame in you're doing the same thing over and over. And there's something very refreshing about it. But I would have to imagine if you're a Steelers fan that this is an absolute headache where you're entering a season where, honestly, you really don't have a lot of hope in what this season is going to be.
And it's crazy because the quarterback position is such a delicate one to navigate and kind of, I guess, lobby for the team to start to take action to, okay, this guy is in his 12th year. It doesn't matter how great he is. We still got to start to find his replacement. I mean, time is not on his side. It doesn't happen like that for any other position in the league, right? So you have veteran guys or all-star guys or Hall of Fame guys at other positions. You can get a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick that comes in to play safety. I can just take myself, a 4th-round pick and came in and started from day one, right?
Sure.
But you can find those gems later on in the draft. But that quarterback position is such a delicate one because you're also investing. If you find a quarterback, it doesn't matter where you find him at. If he becomes that guy, you got to pay him as that guy. So it makes it really hard to navigate.
Russell Wilson was the 3rd-round pick, ended up getting the job from day one. This is a team that also, remember, took Mitchell Trubisky after a year in Buffalo, which is crazy to think. And this is one of my favorite things, and by favorite, I mean, Kerry, that I laugh at all the time, was Mitchell Trubisky took about 6 snaps as a Buffalo Bill. But everybody thought that he went through the Buffalo Bill, Josh Allen, Brian Daboll car wash and came out this brand new make and model of an automobile. And he was the same quarterback, maybe if not worse than he was in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so to expect that is addressing your quarterback situation or addressing it this way, it's been a fail after fail after another fail. Ben Roethlisberger in 2018, had statistically, yardage-wise, most yards he ever threw for. But when you blow your elbow out in 2019, I don't know what you can expect. And that's where I think this all goes back from. And maybe a change at some point needs to be made as head coach. Maybe a change needs to be made in the front office. I don't think you're going to see that with the Rooney family. So everybody ends up absorbing some of this blame. Yesterday, Mike Tomlin was blaming the offensive line. And so you'll also have a team that is now in the conversation to acquire Brandon Ayuk. Where does that make sense? And I know to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but the point is this is where the problems with the Pittsburgh Steelers are. If they can't block and you don't have a quarterback, why in the world are you adding another weapon to that defense or offense? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And as we're 2-3 weeks away from starting the season, I'm looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers and still just kind of saying, huh?
And then on top of that, the other crazy part of this situation is the only way they are going to be able to address that quarterback position through the draft is, ironically, firing Mike Tomlin. Because Mike Tomlin is such a good coach and such a good leader of men, they're going to be 500. And so you'll never be able to get that guy anyway.
Yeah, and it's the commitment to try to get that, to be 500, to be slightly better than 500. It's that desire and that commitment to do so, which when you're stuck in the middle, as a hoop head, in the NBA, it's the worst place that you can be.
Right.
You want to be on top or you want to be on the bottom if you're really trying to reset things. And in the NFL, I think it's true. Being a 7 seed in a playoff is no longer a badge of honor. It does not work that way. And again, this is a Pittsburgh Steelers team that made the playoffs last year. And their quarterback at the time was Mason Rudolph, who is now in Tennessee as the backup to Will Levis. So even their starting quarterback from last year, where they had to go through 3 quarterbacks to decide on who they ended up wanting for various reasons, but Mason Rudolph ended up showing up when there were injuries and played well enough to get him to the playoffs. I don't think we would look at Pittsburgh as a playoff team when you talk them only on paper,
right,
not in terms of overall. And I just don't know how they got better this offseason when you have 2 quarterbacks. Justin Fields yesterday threw a pass that was, and I've championed Justin Fields. 15 yards over, 10 yards overthrown, on a wide open, and those are the problems that you're talking about. Russell Wilson doing his little sidestep and move, and then he just turtles up and gets sacked. It's just, I usually don't feel bad for Pittsburgh Steelers fans, but I do have some empathy in this is how your 2024 season has started.
Pittsburgh Steelers fans, I don't care at all, just so you guys know if you're listening. I hope you guys go 6-10 or 6-11 this year.
What about 0-17?
Oh, that was a shot.
You
Huh?
want 0-17? You want to give them 6 wins?
I hate the terrible towels. They show up so many times, and no, I'm just joking.
They
base
are.
is great.
No,
Fan
they
base
stole
is great.
they stole the Super Bowl from the Seahawks in Super Bowl 40, so I don't like them either. But I do feel for them in having the start of the year when everything is of hope and hype, and you go into the season, and that's what you have to watch for.
Yeah.
Because I started with Russell Wilson. We started with
Yes.
the current. If it doesn't work for Russell, do you think that he would continue a life as a backup in the NFL, or do you think he would just call it quits?
That's a great question. I think he would probably leave the game before he's going to be a perennial backup.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that the toughest part of him being benched last year in Denver was that he was never really benched before in the pro game because, as I mentioned, he starts week 1 of his rookie season for the Seahawks, so he's always been that starter guy. I don't think he would feel comfortable being a backup. I don't know if he would know how to be a backup. I would say this. I think it would be the best thing for him because I think it'd be better for Russell Wilson to come in and save the day than try to seize the day from the beginning. I think that's actually a better role for him. I just don't know if he's ever going to accept that sort of role.